Hey everybody, welcome to road.cc. Now, in case you've missed it, Chris Boardman has built a wind tunnel in the Midlands, the Boardman Performance Centre. Matt, you've been there a couple of times.
Been there twice, yes.
And I've been there recently. Boardman invited us to go and have a go through the Performance Centre to see the process. And that is one of the unique things about it. It's open to anyone, so you can pay your money and you can go and give it a go. So, without further ado, let's go and have a look at my day. It's certainly unusual to pull up to a retail park and find a state-of-the-art performance facility there. Now, the wind tunnel's the headline, but it's not the whole picture. There's a physiology lab where you can get your fitness assessed, and a biomechanics lab that deals with how you interact with the bike. Oh, and there's a bike shop too, of course. Now, there's no point in being super aero if you can't get your power to the pedals, so biomechanics is our first stop. Bianca, who's the bike fitter and physio, chats with me about my goals. A super aero position you can hold for a couple of minutes is no use if you're targeting a 6-hour Gran Fondo, so the outcome has to match the goal. My focus here is crit racing. Races are generally under an hour, so I can put up with a bit of discomfort to get the aero gains. We work through a series of exercises to test my flexibility. There's quite a lot of focus on the shape of my feet. I've got high arches, and Bianca doesn't think I'm likely to be getting the power through to the pedals as effectively as I could. Finally, it's time to get on a bike. A watt bike anyway, set up to match my position on my current bike, a Boardman SLR 9.6. I'm covered from head to toe in Velcro and sensors, and cameras capture my every movement. My pedalling effectiveness is measured via the watt bike on a polar graph that's commonly referred to as the peanut for obvious reasons. There's a saddle pressure sensor mapping where I'm sitting too. My starting setup isn't bad, but Bianca immediately starts bringing my saddle forward, and by the end of the session I'm 20mm further forward on the bike. It's a position that does feel more natural, and the pressure mapping shows that my weight has shifted backwards on the saddle, anchoring me on my sit bones a bit better. The change should help me apply force to the pedals more effectively. My pedal effectiveness score doesn't change much between the hoods and the drops, and that suggests I'll be able to cope with changes to my position. The biomechanics session doesn't just look at my position from a pedalling efficiency point of view. With one eye on the wind tunnel session that's coming up, there's also time to try some changes that will make me more aerodynamic. Because I'm hooked up to sensors, Bianca can gauge whether the aero changes will have any effect biomechanically. One thing to try is a narrower handlebar to reduce my frontal area. Because I ride a big bike, I'm usually on a 44cm bar. But Bianca reckons I'll be able to switch to a 40cm bar without any problems, especially for the shorter durations I'm looking at. Other positional changes don't work as well. We all love the look of a slammed stem, but when I try a lower front position on the watt bike, I get more saddle pressure and less effective pedalling, which would cancel out any aero gain. The ideal changes here will either make me more efficient without adding to my drag, or they'll make me more aero without any biomechanical loss. Bianca's analysis of my pedalling shows that my foot is in a plantar flex position. Basically, I'm pointing my toes down rather than keeping my foot flat, which isn't as efficient. The watt bike peanut also shows I'm a bit lopsided. My right leg isn't engaging fully, something that I have noticed when I've been using other double-sided power meters. Bianca reckons that getting my foot in the correct biomechanical position will improve matters, and for that I need custom insoles. The process is really simple. You sink your feet into a soft bed in the correct position, then the air is sucked out to hold an impression of your foot. The insoles are heated to make them malleable, then they're pressed into the holes your feet made. A quick go on the grinder to make them fit your shoes and you're ready to go. In no time at all I'm back on the watt bike with the new insoles in place, and the results are very encouraging. The change has anchored me even more firmly on the saddle, meaning that I should be able to activate my glutes and hamstrings better and apply more force to the pedals. With what we've learned in the lab, it's time to spend some time in the wind. The bit of the wind tunnel you actually sit on your bike in is a kind of big square room, but that's just a tiny part of what is a massive machine. The Boardman tunnel can run at up to 80 km per hour, and all the air it uses has to be contained and controlled within a huge hangar. There's the giant fan that sucks the air past you, of course, and a huge inlet the size of a house that funnels and evens out the airflow across the sensors. The first part of the session is to test my default riding position before any changes, both head on into the wind and at 10 degrees of yaw to simulate a side wind. The bike sits on a turntable in the airflow, and projected on the floor in front of you is an image of your position from the front and the side, and a real-time readout of your drag. The numbers don't mean much to me at this point, so it's time to have a seat in the control room and let Barney, the head of science, talk me through the data. The main thing we look at is my coefficient of drag area, or CDA. That's a combination of my frontal area and how slippery I am as a shape. In my standard position on the hoods, my CDA is over 0.37. That's not good. With the wind tunnel running at 45 km per hour, Barney calculates that I'd need to put out 515 watts to maintain that speed, and I'm not going to keep that up very long. On the drops it's better, a CDA of just under 0.36, translating into 498 watts of effort. Barney suggests 0.30 will be a reasonable target. To put all those numbers into perspective, Chris Boardman's Superman position had a CDA of around 0.17. Clearly, there's a lot of room for improvement. So armed with the knowledge that I'm more of a sail than a bullet and a target to aim at, we head back into the wind to try and optimise my position as far as possible, but in a way that's sustainable. The projected image shows me my body outline from the first run, and the aim is to make myself into a smaller shape to reduce the frontal area that I'm showing to the wind. We try a couple of positions on the hoods. The first is with my arms bent a bit more to lower my body. The second is the position beloved of pro breakaway riders everywhere, hands on the hoods and forearms flat. Both are effective at reducing my drag. The first position drops my CDA to just under 0.33, which would mean 463 watts to stay at 45 km an hour. The second is even better, producing a CDA of just 0.31. There's a trade-off though. I can't hold that position very long, it's murder on my triceps. Just getting through the measurement run is hard enough. That's something I could work on, both by spending more time in that position on rides and by targeting those muscles with off-the-bike exercises. But if the breakaway position isn't sustainable for me right now, how about a drops position that gives me a similar benefit? Using my outline from the previous run, I try to get myself into a position on the drops that matches my body shape. It's not quite as effective with a CDA of just under 0.32, but it certainly feels like I'd be able to hold it for much longer. Maybe not a whole race, but maybe for the bits that mattered. And it's a huge saving over my standard drops position. I'd need to put out 50 watts less to stay at 45 km per hour. At slower speeds, the savings are much smaller, but they're still meaningful. There are some other interventions to try too. There's not enough time left to actually swap out the wide handlebars on the bike, but Barney gets me to try a virtual narrower bars position, resting my hands inboard of the shift levers. Compared to my benchmark position, that's a saving of about 11 watts at 45 km per hour. We try a virtual tri-bar position too, arms central and resting on the bars. There's a reason all those triathletes and pursuiters use tri-bars. It's no surprise that this is the most efficient position aerodynamically, and it's the only one that dips my CDA below Barney's 0.30 target. After that, there's just time for some tinkering with clothing. The dependable road.cc kit gets binned in favour of a BioRacer single-piece aero suit, and my Laser Z1 helmet is swapped out for a Uvex aero lid. Compared to the positional changes, the savings seem small, but if you've already optimised your position as much as you can, then there are still gains to be made. The Uvex helmet would save me just 4 watts at 45 km per hour. The suit is a bit more effective, saving around 10 watts. It doesn't seem like much, but over a 10-mile time trial, those two changes would save me the best part of 15 seconds. Overall, with all the changes added together, I'd be nearly a minute and a half quicker.
So you've tried out the facilities on offer at the Boardman Performance Centre.
Yeah.
And how did you find it?
It's an impressive facility.
It's amazing, eh?
Yeah, very easy to work through the process as well. Like, it's well explained to you. It's very much tailored to your needs. So I was talking a lot about, crit racing because that's the thing that I do. But if you're a time trialist, or if you're, doing long distance stuff, if you're doing the transcontinental race and you want to make sure you're not wasting any effort with your bike bags flapping about in the wind, that's another thing you can use it for. You can use it for pretty much anything, and it's great to have that repeatable data that is accurate.
So it's been a while since you were at the wind tunnel.
Yeah.
How have you been able to implement the changes that were recommended?
Okay, so there's two things really. There's my position on the bike when I'm riding it, and there's the actual bike itself. So the changes to the bike itself generally were narrower bars. So I went from a 44 centimetre to a 40 centimetre. Slightly longer stem, so it was already a 120. I've gone out to a 130.
Right.
Looks pretty pro now,
Yeah.
if I say so myself.
Yeah.
And moved my saddle very slightly forwards. Well, 20 mil forwards.
Because
biomechanically better for me to be more over the pedals. I was more planted in the saddle.
Yeah.
It's easier to apply power. Also, I had custom insoles, so they're also designed to correct my foot position slightly, so I'm pushing down on the pedal better, effectively. So those are the actual physical changes. And then on the bike, it was more a case of knowing from the wind tunnel which positions were good for me aerodynamically, and making sure that I was doing those when I needed to.
Okay.
So I have raced since then. I came 9th,
Well
which
done.
is good for me.
Congratulations.
That's better.
Top 10 finish.
Better than normal.
Excellent.
Obviously, there's loads of factors in play when you're in a race, and it's not just about like how airy you can be. But I did find myself knowing when I needed to be aerodynamic and remembering what those positions felt like and getting into them in the right places.
Quite easy to implement it. I mean, to when you're in the moment in a race, to think, right, back at the performance centre, they told me X, Y, and Z.
I think you kind of get a feel for what it feels like. Yeah. Because specifically, like when I'm in the drops in my optimized position, I know that when I'm pedaling, my elbows and my knees are just about touching when I'm at the top of my pedal stroke. So I can feel for that. I can understand where that position is. And it's not a position I could hold for a whole race, but it is a position I could hold for kind of 5 minutes.
Okay.
And realistically, what you need to do is in a race, you need to hold it when you're on the front, or when you're chasing back on, or any time when you don't feel like you're getting an aerodynamic advantage from being in the middle of the pack.
Sure. So you've got some markers that you can use when it's time to bring those things in.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Stuff you can bring to mind.
Yeah, and it's a huge advantage over my standard position. So we're talking about at 45 kilometers an hour, we're talking about a 50 watt advantage. So saving 50 watts to do the same speed.
Yeah,
So for me, that's a case of maybe it would mean that I could bridge to a break, or maybe it would mean that if I found myself off the back of the race, then I would be able to get back on again. Or maybe it would just mean that I could stay in a fast race for longer than I normally would.
Sure.
And I think what I found with the last race, the first one that I'd done with the knowledge of the wind tunnel and the optimized position, was I found that I could stay in it more easily.
What about, obviously, the vast majority of the time you're not spending racing. That's once in a while, it might be regular, but it's not, the vast majority of your time is spent training or
riding or
riding.
doing big long rides. So for instance, I did a 600k Audax a week or so ago, which is a long way.
It's quite a way.
And one of the things that I especially found myself doing was, one of the things we did in the wind tunnel was tried the virtual tri-bar position. So not with tri-bars, but just elbows in the middle.
As if.
Yeah. And that was the most aerodynamic position overall for me. But I found myself doing that a lot more on a 600k Audax than I would normally do, because I felt like I could, because I knew it was more aerodynamic, because I knew I was saving myself energy, I was kind of gravitating towards it quite a bit more than I normally would.
I can see that the fact that you're going to get benefit by doing it would draw you to actually doing it and make yourself do it.
And in my head, there's a number associated with it now. I mean, it doesn't, not necessarily a realistic number, because I don't spend a lot of my Audax doing 45 kilometers an hour, especially not in a virtual tri-bar position, but it will. But I know that it will make a difference.
Talk with the Audax that day.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I find that when I'm riding fast, I'm just spending more time in the drops. So I'm not uncomfortable in the drops, but it's not my natural position. But I know that I always knew that it was quicker. I think it's just a case of, again, you're associating a number with it now, or you're associating a saving that you've seen with it now. For me, with a starting point of never having had a bike fit and never having been in a wind tunnel, there's masses of stuff to take from it.
So finally, would you be geared up to the idea of going back for another session at the Performance Centre?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I mean, there's other stuff that I'd like to try. So I've talked about doing Audax riding. Be really interested to go in there with an Audax setup and see how much difference, things like mud guards and bags, clothing, how much difference that makes in that context.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah, especially when you're thinking about, if you're an ultra racer, if you're doing something like the Transcontinental where you're riding for, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 days straight.
Yeah.
You could, even if it's just a small difference,
exactly.
It's going to add up to a lot.
We know about marginal gains.
We know about marginal gains, but we don't always apply them to Audax.
No, right. But maybe this is how you'll make your fortune.
Maybe.
A new little niche. So, all good, positive experience?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, really good positive experience. Yeah. So, that was our experience of the Boardman Performance Centre and the wind tunnel. If you've got any questions about my day or my data, ask them in the comments below. We'll get them answered for you. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this on road.cc. Cheers.